"Farm boy, on your feet!" The shout cracked across the barracks like a rifle shot. Boots slammed the concrete floor, but one set was slower. Mine. Sergeant Briggs was already waiting, jaw tight, eyes full of contempt. He kicked my bunk frame so hard my pack toppled onto the floor. "Pick it up, Hale. You're not at the barn anymore." Laughter echoed down the row of cots. My face burned. My fists stayed tight at my side. And that's how my first week in the Army introduced me. Not with respect, not with brotherhood, but with humiliation. I kept my mouth shut. Talking back meant more push-ups, more punishment. Briggs knew it. The squad knew it. They watched as I scrambled to gather my gear, shoving socks into my rucksack like a clumsy recruit fresh off the bus. "City soldiers, take a good look," Briggs barked. "This is what happens when you drag a farmhand into my barracks. He thinks hay bales and rifles weigh the same." More laughter. My accent, my quiet ways, the grease-stained calluses still on my hands. Everything about me screamed outsider. The Army runs on rhythm. Boots lined up, beds tight enough to bounce a quarter, voices in unison. But that day my rhythm was broken, thrown off by the shame of standing there as Briggs tore me apart. I wanted to disappear. Instead, I stood at attention, jaw clenched, eyes forward. Out of the corner of my vision, I saw Corporal Ramirez. He said nothing, didn't step in, but his eyes followed me, not mocking, not cold, just watching. Almost like he was waiting to see how much I could take. At chow that evening, Briggs struck again. "Make way for the barn boy," he sneered, shoulder-checking me as I carried my tray. Food slid off, potatoes splattering onto the floor. A wave of laughter rolled through the mess hall. I stood there, holding a tray half empty, boots sticky with gravy. Every instinct screamed to swing back, to throw a punch that would silence them all. But I didn't. I knelt, scooped up what I could, dumped the rest, and ate what was left. Silence fell for a moment, because no one expected me to take it. Briggs smirked, satisfied. Ramirez sat 3 tables down, quiet, eyes flicking from me to Briggs, then back again. He didn't speak, but he didn't laugh either. That silence meant more than I could explain. Later that night, when lights went out and the barracks smelled of sweat, polish, and damp uniforms, I sat on the edge of my bunk. My hands trembled, not from fear, but from rage I refused to let out. I opened my footlocker and there it was. A small Bronze Star medal, my father's. He'd earned it in Vietnam. He never bragged, never spoke much about it. Just told me once, "Respect is earned, son, and it's earned when no one's watching." I kept it wrapped in cloth, hidden from the rest of the platoon. If Briggs ever saw it, he'd twist it into another insult. So I let them believe I was weak. Let them believe I was out of place. Truth is, I didn't come to the Army to prove Briggs wrong. I came to prove my father right. But those first weeks, it felt like I was fighting a war on my own side. Every drill, Briggs singled me out. "Hale, run it again," he'd bark while the others rested. My boots filled with mud, my body ached, but I kept moving. That was the only answer I had. Endure. Every insult burned, but I swallowed it. Every shove made me stumble, but I stood back up. I thought that was the end of it. Just humiliation, repeated day after day, until maybe I faded into the background. But what I never expected was how quickly things could change. That all it would take was one moment, one test, to turn every laugh into silence. The storm was coming, and I was ready in ways none of them could imagine. If this story resonates with you, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next chapters of this journey. Rain poured like it wanted to break us. Cold, heavy, relentless. We'd been on the field for hours, soaked to the bone, rifles caked in mud, boots sinking into the dirt with every step. Sergeant Briggs stood there under his poncho, dry and smug, barking orders as if he enjoyed the sight of us freezing. "Hale, front and center. Let's see if the barn boy can carry more than hay." He tossed me a sandbag heavier than regulation, waterlogged and brutal. The others groaned, already carrying their own loads. But I had no choice. I heaved it onto my shoulders, nearly buckling under the weight. The laughter came quick. "Look at him stumble!" Careful, farm boy. Don't drown in the mud. My knees shook, but I kept moving, each step fueled by something deeper than pride. I wasn't going to give Briggs the satisfaction of seeing me quit. By the time we dragged ourselves back into the barracks that night, everything smelled of wet socks and sweat. My hands were raw, skin peeling from the rifle drills, but I didn't complain. Complaining meant weakness, and weakness was a scent Briggs could sniff out from across the room. As I sat on the edge of my bunk, peeling off soaked boots, one voice cut through the noise. Tough day, huh? It was Ramirez, his tone low enough so Briggs couldn't hear. He slid an extra piece of bread from his tray onto mine earlier in the chow hall, like it meant nothing, but I noticed. Now he looked at me, not with pity, but with a quiet respect he wouldn't admit out loud. I just nodded. Seen worse, I muttered, even though my body screamed otherwise. Ramirez gave a small half-smile and went back to lacing his boots. That moment stayed with me longer than the rain. The mess hall was another battlefield. The smell of powdered eggs, burnt coffee, and canned fruit filled the air. I carried my tray carefully, eyes down, when Briggs's voice boomed. Careful, farm boy, don't spill it this time. They don't teach balance out in the cornfields. His buddies laughed. I sat alone, picking at my food. Every insult burned, but I forced myself to swallow them along with the powdered eggs. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught Ramirez again. He didn't laugh, didn't say anything either, but the silence mattered. In a place where silence could be cruel, his was something different, something steady. That night, after lights out, when the barracks was nothing but snores, the hum of a fan, and the faint smell of polish, I slipped out to the obstacle course. Moonlight cut across the yard, shadows stretching over wooden walls and ropes slick with rain. I ran it alone, over and over, hands raw, arms burning, chest heaving. Each time I fell, I got back up. Each time I hit the ground, I remembered my father's voice. Discipline is the armor no bullet can pierce. I whispered it like a prayer, each word pushing me forward. The mud sucked at my boots, but I kept moving until my muscles screamed for mercy. No one saw. No one applauded. That was fine. Respect, I knew, was earned in silence first. The next day was rifle qualification. Everyone lined up, rifles clean, boots shining. I could feel Briggs's eyes on me like a hawk, waiting for me to mess up. First round I stumbled. Scope fogged from my breath. Shots scattered. Briggs pounced. Pathetic. Bet you couldn't hit the broadside of your daddy's barn. Laughter again. My stomach nodded, but I stayed quiet. When the others left for chow, I stayed behind, running drill after drill until my fingers blistered and bled. I stripped the rifle blindfolded, reassembled it until I could do it in my sleep. I fired again, the recoil bruising my shoulder, but I kept going. The range officer raised an eyebrow. You planning to sleep out here? I didn't answer. I couldn't. I needed every round, every moment, until my shots began to group tighter, until the clumsy recruit Briggs mocked was replaced by a soldier who refused to quit. Back in the barracks, Briggs didn't let up. You think staying late makes you special? Makes you better than the rest of us? His tone dripped with venom. Newsflash, farm boy, you'll never be more than a weak link, and weak links get people killed. His words cut deeper than he knew, because that was my greatest fear, that maybe he was right. Maybe I was the one who didn't belong. My hands curled into fists under the blanket, nails digging into skin, but I stayed silent. If I answered, I'd give him more ammunition. Instead, I whispered to myself, not today, not ever. Ramirez heard it. I know he did, because when Briggs walked away, Ramirez's voice carried across the dim barracks, just loud enough for me to hear. Keep going, Hale. They'll see. He said no more, but those 3 words stuck like steel in my chest. They'll see. Not today, not yet, but one day. The days blurred, mud runs, shouted cadence, endless drills. Every time Briggs called me out, I took it. Every time the squad laughed, I let them. And every night, I pushed harder in silence. My body broke and healed again. I carried weight until my back screamed, fired rounds until my hands went numb, studied field manuals under my blanket with a flashlight until the words burned into my skull. They thought I was weak. Maybe I was at first. But weakness, I learned, is just strength waiting to be sharpened. And then came the moment that burned into all of us. A forced march under the blazing sun, gear heavy, canteens near empty. Briggs walked beside me, grinning like he was waiting for me to drop. "Farm boy won't last another mile," he muttered loud enough for everyone to hear. My legs shook, vision blurred, but I kept moving. Sweat dripped into my eyes. My lips cracked. I thought I'd collapse. Then the soldier in front of me stumbled, going down hard. Gear spilled, rifle clattering against the road. Briggs froze, stunned, useless. Without thinking, I dropped my pack, hauled the soldier up, slung his gear over my own shoulders, and pushed forward. Every muscle screamed, but I carried him, step after step. No words, just grit. The march ended with me still standing, the soldier leaning against me, alive because I refused to let go. Silence fell as we reached the checkpoint. Even Briggs couldn't speak. For the first time, his smirk vanished. Ramirez walked past, eyes meeting mine, and whispered, "They saw." That was the moment everything shifted. If this story resonates with you, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next chapters of this journey. They called it a routine field exercise, but nothing about it felt routine. The sun was brutal, the gear heavier than usual, and the tension in the air was thick enough to choke on. We'd been ordered into the forest, packs loaded, rifles slung, radios buzzing with static. Sergeant Briggs strutted at the front like he owned the world, barking commands with that same cocky grin he always wore. "Stay sharp, boys. Today we see who can hack it and who should have stayed home." His eyes cut back toward me, a smirk tugging at his mouth. Everyone knew who that jab was for. I kept my face blank, boots steady, heart pounding a little harder than I wanted to admit. We moved through the thick brush, mud clinging to our boots, gnats biting at our necks. Sweat stung my eyes. The squad grumbled under their breath, but Briggs acted like he was leading us into combat. "Farm boy, you better not slow us down," he said loud enough for all to hear. The others chuckled, more out of habit than malice now. I took it, like always, pushing forward, one step after another. Out of the corner of my eye, Ramirez walked steady and silent. He never joined in the mockery, never defended me either. But his silence wasn't empty. It carried weight, like he knew something the others didn't. By the third mile, the radio started crackling. Static, then silence. Briggs smacked the set strapped to his chest, cursed under his breath, then called back, "Hale, get up here. Maybe you can fix this piece of junk since you're so good at shoveling dirt." Laughter again. I moved up, wiped the sweat from my face, and looked at the tangle of wires and dials. My father's voice echoed in my head. "If it breaks, you don't panic. You breathe, you think, you solve." My hands worked fast, twisting, reconnecting, tuning the dial. Within seconds, the static cleared. A voice came through. "Unit Bravo, report status." Briggs blinked, surprised. Yeah, we're operational." He tried to make it sound like he'd done it. The squad glanced at me, some with raised eyebrows. I didn't say a word. I just stepped back into formation. Ramirez caught my eye, gave the faintest nod. That was enough. The exercise pushed harder. We climbed ridges, crawled through mud, kept our rifles above water as streams swallowed our boots. My body ached, but I pushed on. Briggs shouted, insulted, tried to grind me down. "Pick it up, Hale. This isn't a hayride." But something in me was shifting. Every insult bounced off like it was hitting armor. The farm boy he mocked wasn't breaking anymore. He was sharpening. Night fell quick in the woods. The sky turned black, the air cold and damp. We moved in staggered formation, flashlights off, navigating by the faint glow of the moon. That's when it happened. A scream tore through the night. One of the younger recruits, Thompson, slipped. His body disappeared over the edge of a ravine, gear crashing against rocks, rifle clattering out of reach. "Man down," someone yelled. The squad froze, eyes wide, fear spreading faster than fire. Briggs stood stiff, paralyzed. His mouth opened, closed, no words coming out. For the first time, Sergeant Briggs didn't know what to do. Without thinking, I dropped my pack and dove. The rope on my shoulder hit the ground as I slid to the edge, heart hammering. "Hold on!" I shouted, voice raw. I tied a knot fast, hands working on instinct, muscle memory from nights alone on the obstacle course. Ramirez grabbed the other end without hesitation, bracing his boots against a tree. I lowered myself, dirt crumbling under my boots, the drop steep enough to make my stomach twist. Thompson's eyes were wide, fingers slipping on loose rock. "I got you," I told him, calm even though adrenaline roared in my veins. I reached, gripped his wrist, hauled with everything I had. My arms screamed, back felt like it was tearing, but I pulled until his body cleared the edge. We both collapsed in the mud, gasping. Silence followed, thick and heavy. Then a murmur spread. No laughter, no mockery, just disbelief. Briggs finally spoke, voice shaky. "Back in formation." He tried to sound firm, but it was too late. Everyone saw. Everyone knew. The authority he'd clung to like a shield was slipping. He hadn't moved when one of his men needed him. I had. Ramirez helped Thompson to his feet, clapped me on the shoulder once, quiet but steady. That gesture hit harder than any applause ever could. We regrouped and marched on. The squad whispered, stealing glances at me. Briggs barked louder, trying to reassert control, but his words felt hollow now. Something had shifted. The air itself was different. And then the real shock came. At the checkpoint, Captain Dawson stood waiting, arms crossed, face unreadable. We filed in, exhausted, mud-covered, dragging our gear. He stopped us with a raised hand. His eyes landed on me. "Private Hale, step forward." My gut twisted. Was I in trouble? Did I break some protocol? The squad leaned in, curious. Briggs smirked, thinking I was about to be chewed out. "Hale," Dawson said, voice low but carrying weight. "Do you know what your highest score was during evaluations?" I froze. "No, sir." He nodded slowly. "Second highest tactical problem-solving score in the entire company. That radio fix earlier? Not luck, knowledge, discipline, preparation." The squad stared, jaws slack. Briggs blinked, lost for words. Dawson continued. "You've been underestimated. By them, by your sergeant, maybe even by yourself. But I see you." His voice sharpened. "And now they do too." The silence that followed was deafening. Every insult, every laugh, every shove from Briggs over the past weeks collapsed in that moment. The farm boy had just been unmasked as something else entirely. The squad didn't know what to say. Even Briggs was speechless, his face pale, eyes darting anywhere but mine. Ramirez stood a little taller, pride flickering across his face, though he kept his silence. That was the climax, the moment that flipped the entire power dynamic. I wasn't the weak link anymore. I wasn't the butt of their jokes. I was the soldier who fixed the radio when it mattered, the one who dove into the ravine, the one their captain trusted. And Briggs, he was exposed. His arrogance, his cruelty. It all looked small now, smaller than the mud on his boots. We stood at attention as Dawson dismissed the unit. The march back was different. No one laughed at me. No one called me farm boy. Some glanced my way, like they were seeing me for the first time. Briggs walked stiff, silent, his authority shattered. Ramirez fell into step beside me. Didn't say a word, but his presence said everything. Respect, brotherhood, recognition. Lying in my bunk that night, muscles throbbing, cuts stinging, I stared at the ceiling and let it sink in. The humiliation, the nights alone, the whispers and laughter. It had all built to this. Not because I shouted louder, not because I fought back with fists, but because I endured until the truth revealed itself. Respect earned, not demanded. Strength shown when no one expected it. That's the only way it sticks. I thought about my father's bronze star, tucked away in my locker. For the first time, I felt like I was carrying it right. Not as a relic, not as a reminder, but as a weight I was finally worthy of. The journey wasn't over. There would be more battles, more tests. But tonight, I wasn't farm boy anymore. I was Private Hale, and they saw me. Word travels fast in the Army. By the next morning, everyone on base knew what had happened in the woods. How Briggs froze, how I fixed the radio, how I pulled Thompson from that ravine when he was seconds from falling. Soldiers talk in whispers, but whispers spread like wildfire. For the first time, the laughter in the chow hall wasn't aimed at me. It was quieter, sharper, directed toward Briggs when he walked by. He kept his chin high, but the cracks showed. His swagger wasn't swagger anymore. It was armor that didn't fit. At breakfast, trays clattered, coffee poured, the usual mess hall noise filling the air. Briggs strode in, expecting the usual chuckles at my expense. He slammed his tray down across from me. "Enjoy the spotlight, farm boy. Doesn't last. One good day doesn't erase a lifetime of weakness." His voice was steady, but his eyes betrayed him. There was something else there. Fear. I didn't answer. Didn't need to. Ramirez was 2 tables over, watching, steady as always. He didn't defend me, and didn't call Briggs out, but he didn't look away either. That silence felt heavier now, like everyone was waiting to see how Briggs would handle his fall. Later that day, Captain Dawson called the entire platoon into formation. His voice cut the air like a blade. Yesterday's exercise revealed a lot. It showed courage, it showed weakness, and it showed who this unit can depend on when it matters. His eyes scanned us, resting on me, then on Briggs. The silence was brutal. Everyone stood stiff, waiting. Then Dawson dropped the hammer. Sergeant Briggs failed in his duty as a leader. He froze. He left his men vulnerable. That is unacceptable. Gasps rippled through the ranks. You could feel Briggs shrink, his authority stripped bare in front of everyone. Dawson's voice never wavered. "This unit doesn't need arrogance. It needs trust. Respect is earned in fire, not demanded in comfort. Private Hale, you carried that truth yesterday." My heart hammered, but I stood tall, eyes forward. That moment wasn't about me. It was about every insult, every humiliation finally flipping back on the one who dished them out. Briggs's face flushed deep red. He opened his mouth, maybe to defend himself, but Dawson raised a hand. "Enough. You've said plenty in the past. Now it's time you listen." For the first time since I'd stepped into this platoon, Briggs had no words, just silence. He stared straight ahead, jaw locked, swallowing the weight of his own failure. Around me, soldiers shifted, stealing glances my way. Not with laughter, not with mockery, but with something I'd never seen before. Respect. That night, the barracks felt different. The usual jeers were gone. Boots lined the floor, beds made tight, but the air had shifted. Thompson walked by my bunk, the same kid I pulled from the ravine, and muttered, "Thanks, Hale. Owe you one." Simple words, but they cut deep. For weeks, those same voices laughed when Briggs pushed me down. Now they were seeing me as part of them. Maybe even someone to look to. Ramirez sat across from me, polishing his boots, the steady rhythm of cloth on leather filling the quiet. He looked up, his voice low. "Told you. They'd see." He gave the faintest smile. No grand speech, no applause. Just truth. And in that moment, it meant more than anything. But the real explosion came at mail call. The drill sergeant tossed envelopes, names shouted. One landed in my hands, a package from home. I opened it on my bunk. Inside, wrapped in brown paper, was my father's bronze star. My mother must have sent it, no note included, just the medal itself. The barracks went silent when the ribbon caught the light. Briggs was across the room, his eyes locked on it, and for a split second, all the arrogance drained from his face. He knew the farm boy he'd mocked carried a legacy bigger than him, bigger than his insults, bigger than his false authority. Ramirez saw it too. His voice carried across the barracks, calm but cutting. That medal doesn't get sent unless someone earned the right to carry it. The silence was absolute. Briggs lowered his gaze, shame written all over him. That was the moment it all flipped. Not when I pulled Thompson out of the ravine. Not when Dawson called him out. But right there, in the barracks, when my father's legacy hit the light and Briggs realized he'd been humiliating the son of a soldier who already paid the price for honor. His power evaporated. Mine was born. From that night on, the unit treated me different. Briggs avoided me, his silence louder than his insults ever were. The others started including me. At chow, during drills, even in the jokes that once left me out. Respect wasn't given. It was earned, like Dawson said in The Fire. I didn't just survive Briggs. I redefined what I meant to this platoon. And as I lay in my bunk, the Bronze Star back in its cloth, tucked safe inside my footlocker, I realized something. I wasn't just carrying my father's medal anymore. I was carrying my own weight, my own place in this brotherhood. The farm boy was gone. In his place stood a soldier who had endured humiliation, faced down arrogance, and come out standing taller. And the best part? They all saw it. Every last one of them. The mornings on base always started the same. Bugle call, boots stomping the floor, the sharp smell of polish and sweat in the air. But that morning, something was different. The silence was thicker. The laughter that once trailed Briggs's insults was gone. I laced my boots slow, letting the leather creak, while across the barracks Briggs walked past without a word. Just a nod, a single nod, stiff, almost painful. That was the man who once called me farm boy in front of everyone. Now he couldn't look me in the eye. Funny how things turn. We fell into formation, the flag ceremony starting like it did every day. The colors went up, the anthem played, and for the first time I stood there not as the outsider, not as the weak link, but as one of them. My hands trembled slightly from the cuts and bruises still healing, but they stayed steady at the salute. I felt the weight of every moment that had brought me here, the humiliation, the mud, the nights alone on the obstacle course. And I realized this wasn't just my victory. It was proof that no insult, no shove, no cheap laugh could ever define who I was. Afterward, we marched back to the barracks, rifles slung, boots hitting the ground in perfect rhythm. Thompson, the kid I pulled from the ravine, caught up beside me. "Hale," he said quietly, "you didn't just save me out there. You showed us what right looks like." He didn't wait for an answer, just kept walking. Those words sat heavy in my chest, heavier than any pack I'd ever carried. Respect wasn't about applause. It was about being trusted when everything fell apart. In the chow hall, I noticed it too. The seats around me weren't empty anymore. A couple of guys slid in beside me, passing trays, talking about the drill schedule, like I'd always been there. No grand announcement, just acceptance. That's how change shows up in the military, not with parades, but with who chooses to sit next to you at chow. Ramirez passed by, gave me a look, then sat across from me. He leaned forward, voice low. "Your father would have been proud." The words caught me off guard. He knew about the medal. Maybe he'd seen it. Maybe he just understood. I swallowed hard, nodded once. "It's not about me," I said quietly. "It's about the unit." He nodded back. No smile, just that steady respect he always carried. That meant more than anything. Later that night, back in the barracks, the hum of voices faded as lights went out. I opened my footlocker and pulled out the Bronze Star. Held it in my palm, the metal cool against my skin. For weeks it had been just a hidden reminder, something I wasn't sure I deserved to carry. But now it felt different. It wasn't just my father's anymore. It was a reminder of what I had become, of what I had earned. I wrapped it back in cloth, set it down carefully, and closed the locker. As I lay back on my bunk, staring at the ceiling, I thought about all of it. The insults, the silence, the nod from Briggs, the respect in Ramirez's eyes, Thompson's words. Humiliation had forged me, but resilience had defined me. And now when the flag rose each morning, I wasn't the farm boy anymore. I was a soldier among soldiers, and that was enough. If this story resonates with you, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next chapters of this journey. The final image is quiet but unforgettable. The platoon stands in formation as the flag rises against the morning sky. The wind snaps the colors sharp and clean, sunlight glinting off rifles at attention. And there in the front row stands Hale, shoulders squared, eyes steady. No more jeers, no more whispers. Just silence, and then something greater. One by one, soldiers who once laughed at him steal glances his way. Even Briggs, the man who mocked him most, gives a single, almost imperceptible nod. It's not an apology. It's not forgiveness, but it's respect. The kind that can't be faked. The kind that lasts. That moment lingers because it says something bigger than words. Injustice will break you if you let it. Prejudice will bury you if you bow to it. But resilience, quiet resilience, that's the weapon they never expect. In this story, we saw a man mocked, humiliated, and pushed to the edge. But we also saw him endure. And when the test came, he didn't strike back with anger. He answered with courage. Actions speak louder than words. And in the end, those actions rewrote how everyone saw him. For the veterans, the soldiers, the families watching, the story is a reminder. Brotherhood isn't about who shouts the loudest. Honor isn't about stripes on a sleeve or how tough you look in the barracks. It's about standing tall when the world tries to bend you. It's about carrying dignity even when it costs you. Because in the end, what doesn't kill you truly does make you stronger. So now I ask you, if this story stirred something in you, share it in the comments. Tell us what it brought back, what it reminded you of. Hit the like button to show support and subscribe if you want more stories like this one. Until next time, stay strong, stay steady, and never forget. Respect is earned in silence before it's honored in the open.